That didn't sound too flash, did it? So let's get in and see what's going on there. G'day, I'm Shane, this is Shane Shed. This is my 2010 Mitsubishi Outlander. It's a 2.4 two-wheel drive model, and we just got that little bit of a squeal coming from the rear end, so particularly this right rear wheel. So let's get in and do some fault finding. So there's a couple of things that could be going on here. Obviously, one could be a wheel bearing issue. Wheel bearings, when they wear out, tend to increase clearance, so you'll end up getting a bit of movement, which could end up causing some rubbing on the brake components. So that's going to be the first thing we check. So as you see, we've jacked the vehicle up. We're just going to grab this back corner here. Actually, I'm just going to release the handbrake. And we're just going to grab it at 12 and 6 and try and move it sort of in a rocking motion, not getting anything there. And we're going to go at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock and try there. And again, there's no movement, so I'm pretty sure it's possibly not a wheel bearing issue. So it's mainly in reverse. Now I'm going to pop off this wheel, and the next thing we're going to check easily is the brake pads. And I'll show you why in a sec. Okay, now the wheel's off, we're going to have a look at these brake pads. Now, the reason I first suggested the brake pads is because sometimes these things can have a little metal wear tab on there, basically on the backing pad, on the backing plate, should I say. And when that hits the disc, it just vibrates a little bit and gives us that sort of squealing noise that we can hear. So let's have a look and see what we can see. So there is a bit of meat on that outer pad, so we are getting worn down a bit, but if we have a look, I don't know how well you'll see it there, so you can see there's the brake rotor moving, and you can just see there's the backing pad, and that looks like there's not much meat there. So I'm just going to lift up that caliper and we'll have a look at and pull those pads out and have a look at them directly. So in order to get to these pads, I'm just going to undo this bottom caliper bolt. Now it's a 14mm, so you can either use a ringy or a socket, whatever you've got. It shouldn't really make too much of a difference. And with that pin out, we should be able to just lift this caliper up and out of the way, and there we go, and then we can access our pads. This outer pad, I'm just going to grab it with the multi-grips, pull it straight out. So you've got anti-squeal plates. So for this pad, we'll just lever that out, hopefully. There we go, and it's straight out. And as we can see, that's pretty low, and we're kind of in line. That anti-squeal pad has been contacting, that's probably what's making the noise. So it's an easy fix, we just need some new pads. Now, one thing to be aware of is, well, for this one in particular being a 2010, as a cut-off year, or a changeover year, should I say, so there is two different styles of brake pads available. So what I would recommend doing is just make a mental note, or even better, take a photo on your phone, and basically with the outline of the pads, get the basic shape. That way when you go to the parts store, you can identify them easily if there is two different blade types. Before we whack the new pads in, I'm just going to give this a quick squirt up with the brake cleaner, and we need to push the piston back. Now you can get specific tools to push these calipers back in, but to be honest, I've only ever just bothered with an F clamp or a G clamp, and it does the trick I find, to be honest. And just make sure that your clamp is not going to be too big or too small for the center hole, so which this one probably is. Now when pushing your pistons back in your calipers, there's a couple of things to be aware of. So you are going to be pushing brake fluid back through the system. So you can either do one or two things here. You can either just push it straight back, it'll force any fluid back into the master cylinder, so keep an eye up there so you don't overflow it. or you can attach a line to your brake bleed and crack that and let the excess flow into there. So I'm going to have to do a brake bleed on this soon, so I'm going to crack this method. So I'm going to crack the brake bleeder and I'm going to bleed off any excess. So first thing, need to remove that little cap and we'll get our lines. The bleeders are an 8mm, so you just need a little 8mm spanner and just crack it off and put the line on. So we'll open up that bleed, open my container, it stays up. And you can see when I force that piston back, we just get that little bit of extra brake fluid squeezing back. So we will need to probably look at possibly topping up the master cylinder. So these don't take much to force back. So that's it there now. So we'll just tighten that up. And we're good to go. So that's ready to go. So, but before we do that, I'm going to pop this pin out here and we're going to lube it up because this one is a little bit stiff and that's probably why that inner pad had worn prematurely. So we'll just crack that top one off. We might need to just put the bottom pin in just to hold it in place because the whole lot's just, because it's threaded on part of the caliper here. So already, look, there's the little dust boots falling off, but already you can see that's quite dry and kind of sticky. So we need to clean that up and re-lube it. Set that caliper out of the way. A good squirt out with the brake cleaner. Now I just use some specific brake lubricant. So we just throw a bit of the brake grease on there. And we'll just work this in and make sure it comes nice and free. Alright, so this is now all lubed up and smooths nice and free, which is better than what it was before. So now we can stick this caliper back in place. Now I'll torque these up a little bit later. One thing is to make sure that these little boots are all in place properly, because I think that was the problem here, was this one had popped out and had allowed the pin to dry out. But we can see now we've got a lot freer slides than what it was before. So I'm just going to pop that bottom pin out. Like I said, I'll come back and I'll torque these pins up in a sec and we'll go slot the new pads in. So 2 anti-squeal pads or plates just go on the back. And before we throw the pad in, we can just throw a bit of lubricant just on the parts where the pad runs on. So we've just got like a couple of little ears. So I normally go pretty sparingly with any sort of lubricant around brakes. And this one, it just basically slots in place. So go on there. So yeah, that's that pad in, and then the caliper can just slide down over the top. But we're going to get this one in first as well. So this pad just slides in from the bottom. Obviously that you got this clip here that holds it in place, and there's also some pins here. I don't know whether you'll see those. Yeah, you can just see them there. So they slot into these couple of holes here. So you may just need something to lever the clips at the back out. Yeah, and that pretty much locks itself into place. So just check that it is flush, which it is not at the moment. There's one in, and there we go. They're both in, and you can see that that pad is up against the edge of the caliper. If it's not in properly, it'll sit proud. Right, so I just had to clean out this slide a little bit more, as I couldn't get this caliper in far enough in order to nicely clear the brake disc. So just cleaned it out, re-lubricated again, and it's nice and free. And then we can just get both our pins in. It's just a matter of tightening these up now. So torque on these caliper pins is 44 Newton meters. So it is also worth checking the brake caliper minimum thickness. So these rear ones are 10 mil and the minimum is 8.4. So they're about 9.6, so we're pretty good. There we go, and all we need to do now is just a final clean of the brake disc, just to get rid of any greasy fingerprints, all that sort of stuff. And we'll also give this surface here a bit of a wire brush, just to make sure that wheel bolts on nice and cleanly. So I've got one side done, the opposite side's basically just a mirror image, a repeat of the process. I won't bore you with any further video on that because why do you need to see it twice? A few things before you take it for a drive though. So first thing is I like to just make sure that the brake pedal, just give that a couple of applications on the brake pedal, just to make sure that those calipers, pistons come out and everything seats properly, so the first time you may hit the brake pedal, you're not going to do a V8 supercar driver and go straight off the bay first corner at the end of Bay Mountain Straight after a brake pad change.
It hasn't stopped, it hasn't got any front brake, it's locked the rear, so we've seen this over the years.
And then obviously just check your master cylinder reservoir level on the fluid, make sure it's above the minimum. And once you've done that, then you're pretty much good to go for a drive and do a bed-in procedure. Of the brake pads. So what's a bed-in procedure? Get the car up to about 60 k's an hour and you want to stop it relatively quickly, probably down to about 10 kilometers an hour. Don't come to a complete stop, and we need to do that, repeat it pretty rapidly, between 5 to 10 times. This is basically to heat up all the brakes, get the lining onto the disc properly so that it's basically ready to go for normal operation. Once you've done that cycle of brake applications, it's important to let the brakes cool, so drive for a couple of kilometres with minimal application of the brake, just to let everything cool and normalise, and you're pretty much good to go after that. So, thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Comment is greatly appreciated as well. Just those two things go a huge way for the channel. And if you really feel like it, super thanks button if you want to shout me beer or whatever, blah blah blah, all that stuff. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Share the video around if you really want to. And what else? Oh, if you like the Outlander content, then I'll throw a playlist up here, so go check that out. And until next time, I'll see you later. Cheers people.